Something weird is happening with tipping, not just at restaurants, but everywhere.
A tip, a robot to make me a coffee, and they're asking me a tip.
You asked for a free.
Yes, look at that. You gave me a whole
You want
fingers out of it.
You yell at me. I'm not trying to fuck with you. You shut your goddamn fucking mouth.
It's showing up in places where it never used to exist, and the way we interact with it feels completely different than it did even a decade ago. I remember growing up in Canada, and when the bill came, tipping felt pretty straightforward. You'd see options like 10%, 12%, 15%, and the idea was really simple. If someone provided great service, you rewarded them for going above and beyond the duties of their role. But today that feels like a different world entirely. It's now common to see suggested tip amounts of 18%, 20%, 25%, or even 30%, and many people feel like anything below those numbers is somehow offensive.
I think a lot of people are too scared to press no tip or tip what they feel they're comfortable tipping with.
If you can't afford a tip, you can't afford a dine out.
But it's not just the percentages that changed.
Optional for who? It's flashing at me. I don't know who I'm giving money to.
I'm doing all the work. I'm picking it up.
I understand, but it pops up for every car, dine-in or not.
$12 to tape a box? That's robbery. Stop. I want to know what I'm getting.
Tipping itself has started spreading into places where it never used to exist. And that's what makes this conversation much bigger than simply deciding whether to leave 15 or 20%. Now, before we get into where tipping is today, it's important to understand what tipping originally was. For most people, tipping was associated with full-service restaurants. Someone greeted you, took care of your table, checked on your experience, and you rewarded them based on how well they did their job. There was almost an unwritten rule that people followed without even thinking about it, and that was that you tipped at places where you looked down at the menu, not up. And it's that simple distinction that separated hospitality from transactions, and for a long time it made sense. A good server isn't just delivering food, they're managing expectations, solving problems, reading the table, making recommendations, and often taking responsibility for things that aren't even under their control. Now, that's a perspective I think many customers never really see, and when service is done well, much of the effort is invisible. I do get that. The best servers often solve problems before customers even realize there was even a problem in the first place. But while that may explain why tipping originally existed, it doesn't explain why tipping feels so different today. At some point, tipping stopped feeling like a reward and started feeling like an expectation. The percentages kept increasing, but more importantly, the social pressure around tipping changed. And instead of quietly deciding what you wanted to leave, you're now often handed a screen with massive preset percentages while someone stands there watching you make a decision. It transforms what used to feel optional into something that feels mandatory. And the issue isn't just that tips are increasing, it's that tipping has expanded into places where it never used to exist. Coffee shops, takeout counters, food trucks, online checkouts, mobile apps.
Why is there a tip problem?
Sir, it's just part of our new system. You can skip it if you don't want to, but it pops up automatically.
You shouldn't be asking me to tip when I'm doing all the work.
And even self-checkout machines are now asking customers for tips. It's gone completely out of control.
But now they expect you and I to tip self-service checkout machines. Where does it stop? Some airports, bakeries, coffee shops, and even now some stadiums.
And I recently even saw someone share a photo from Waffle House on Reddit where picking up takeout ended up costing more than dining inside the restaurant. So think about that for a second. You're doing the driving, you're picking up the food yourself, and somehow you're paying more for less service. And I've had the same experience ordering pizza in Canada. I place the order myself, drive there myself, pick it up myself, and I still get asked to leave a tip. And at some point you start wondering, what exactly are you tipping for? The most extreme examples of this might be food delivery apps, which is why there's now a common saying among drivers, no tip, no trip.
I'm sorry.
No tip.
I don't have any cash.
You're serious?
On me, yeah.
This was 35 minutes to drive there for just $2.
Look at all these orders. Look at this. No tip, no tip, no trip.
Say it with me, drivers. No tip, no trip. We have to band together because these $2 base orders, that's what we get. $2 is usually the base pay. And then we get nothing on top of that? Absolutely not.
If you don't tip before the service happens, there's a good chance your order sits longer or doesn't get picked up very quickly. But if tipping is supposed to reward good service, how can you possibly evaluate service before it has happened? At that point, the tip isn't really a reward anymore, it's become an entry fee. One of the most common defenses of tipping is that restaurants simply couldn't survive if they had to pay servers a proper wage. We're constantly told that menu prices would skyrocket and businesses would collapse.
Look at this. These restaurant owners are getting richer and richer while we as the customers, we have to pay the employee's salary.
But if that's true, then how are millions of restaurants around the world operating just fine without tipping? Countries like England and Australia, they have restaurants, they have servers, they have hospitality industries, they have full service dining experiences, yet somehow they've managed to build successful restaurant industries without relying on tipping. That alone suggests that the problem isn't as simple as we're often told. Another argument I hear all the time is that if tipping disappeared, service quality would immediately collapse. Servers would stop caring, do the bare minimum, and customers would suffer. I don't buy that argument, and here's why. There's a self-cleansing mechanism built into every service business. If employees provide terrible service, customers notice. They leave bad reviews, they don't come back, they tell their friends, revenue drops, and the business suffers. Therefore, restaurants already have a powerful incentive to provide good service whether tipping exists or not. And frankly, hospitality is literally the job. If someone believes they would provide poor service the moment tips disappear, then I think that raises a bigger question about whether they're in the right profession to begin with. At some point, the conversation stops being about customers and servers and starts becoming about the structure itself. Because the more I look into tipping, it becomes obvious that both sides, the customers and the waiters, are feeling frustrated. Customers feel pressured, judged, and nickeled and dimed, while servers feel dependent on tips, blamed for things outside their control, and trapped inside a system they didn't create. Meanwhile, restaurant owners get to keep labor costs low, while both groups argue with each other, and one thing suddenly becomes very clear.
Pay for my food. How the fuck you didn't think they make money? I pay for my food. How my fucking staff supposed to make fucking money, huh? So raise your price.
The customer thinks the server is the problem, the server thinks the customer is the problem. And both sides are pointing fingers at each other while the business owners profit from the exploitation. And maybe that's the strangest thing about tipping culture today. The biggest argument isn't really about tipping at all, it's about who should be responsible for paying workers fairly and why we've somehow accepted a system that encourages customers and workers to fight each other while everyone else watches from the sidelines. So I'm curious what you think. Should tipping stay exactly as it is, or should restaurants move towards a fixed service charge that's built into every bill? Let me know in the comments, because I'm more convinced than ever that the real debate isn't between customers and servers, it's about the system itself.